let's get started. Several of you trying to help AC, and I really appreciate that. Yes, you may have. Google is a resource hound, so if you have your email accounts open or anything else that's using Google, even Google Chrome can be a resource hound. So I try to shut down as much of that stuff as possible and see if that can help as well. Yes, Carol, I always have these useless trivia kind of things I have to go through. You would be amazed how many of those go through my head and never come out my mouth. It's a real challenge. It's a curse that I have, and I haven't been able to deal with it. So, all right, let's get started. Webinar basics this morning. Very simple stuff. We're going to cover YOUZIGN and MOCKZIGN today. I'm going to talk about those two programs and how they work together a little bit and clear up a little bit of confusion that there might be there. And hopefully that will help. Okay. I can't answer support questions, but we do have Rose on who can direct you in the right place. Now, hopefully we won't have support questions because this is not really the purpose of this webinar. But we do have the very ever helpful Rose, and we're watching amazing things happen with support as Rose has come back. So glad to have you, Rose. Appreciate you being on and sharing this time with you. We know this is a really awkward time for you to be live, especially when you have a baby. So appreciate you joining us today. Your questions are important, but they always have to relate to today's topic, and it's really, really important that we do that as much as possible. And I may even take you through a little bit of the process as how I determine what the day's topic is in just a little bit, okay? The next thing is that this webinar is live and interactive. I'll talk about that a little bit more in just a minute too. It's not intended to be a tutorial. People freak out about making sure they have the replays because they don't want to miss anything. But understand that this is a live and interactive webinar, and it's not intended to be a tutorial. Even though we're going to show you how to do some things, it has a bigger purpose than that, okay? The last thing, and then we'll move off of this, the very last thing is please refer to the link that's provided. And Rose will be able to, I think she'll be able to provide you with that link. It's been a little while. And so we'll do that. Okay. Yeah. Melody, I want to play off your golden nuggets for just a moment because my theme has been gold for a couple of weeks. So that's pretty cool. Hey, Joanna, good to have you on as well. Now let's take a look at this. Let's get started. This quote has been going through my head all week long. Does anybody know who said this? Somebody said this. Somebody famous said this. Does anybody know who said this? Share with me if you know who said this. Yes, it was that famous Kennedy speech. We go to the moon not because it's easy. I love that. We go to the moon not because it's easy, but because it's hard. And the things that we learned as a result of going to the moon have changed the world that we live in. All right. I just love this quote. Sometimes we stare the hard thing right in the eye and we choose to do it, not because it's easy, but simply because it's hard. And so I have not been able to get this off my head since last week when we did this webinar. I drove out my driveway. I looked up on top of the hill that's across the street from my house. And there I see what was the original mock-up for the lunar landing module. Yes, I will come back to that later. I apologize for stopping. Carol has asked a question about GIF-SIGN, and I'm going to do that instructional video or that instructional webinar on GIF-SIGN. There's a couple of tweaks I want to make to how I'm going to do that, and so I've kind of been working on that. I wanted to update from what I was going to share before I did get sick, so thank you for reminding me of that, Carol. That's a good point. Okay, so I'm driving out my driveway. I see the lunar landing. We are not going to do AdPow on these weekly calls, Rohit. So if that's what you're looking for, I hate to disappoint you, but this is not about AdPow. Okay. As I drive out the driveway, I look up on the hill and I see the original nose cone of the lunar landing module, not the original one, but the original mock-up for the one that they used. And so I have this constant reminder about taking on the challenge of going to the moon. We go to the moon not because it's easy, but because it's hard. And I think sometimes we buy a lie that things have to be easy in order for us to do them. And we talked about life without, and some of you are on the webinar, which will remain nameless, that we talked about life without an undo button. Life without an undo button. Sometimes we just plunge ahead. We do things not because they're easy, but because they're hard. All right, let's share some things from the group this morning. And I want to give you a little bit of stuff here from the group. Ray did this. This is 2 images that Ray did, and I had to, Ray, I apologize. I had to cut your name and your face off from the screen capture that I did for the images that you posted in the group. I want to ask you some questions about that, if you don't mind, Ray. I'd like to ask you a couple questions about how you did this. This is really good. This is the kind of thing that Ray does, and this is pretty special. And so I want to take these apart just a little bit. So Ray, thank you for sharing these with the group, but I have some questions to ask as we do this. This image, he talked about doing the reflection in the pool. So I want to ask, Ray, did you add this pickup truck? Did you add this to the inside, to this image here? So you have this layered on top of this. Okay, so then you had to add, because you had this image right here, you had to add the reflection. Is that correct? Because this is great. This is the kind of thing that that I'm always trying to encourage you to do. Ray took this completely to another level, putting that pickup truck inside of that warehouse for business customers made so much sense it wasn't even funny. I looked at this and I went, that is just amazing. I really appreciate how Ray did that. Took the pickup truck and did it in a grayscale. I think the grayscale, oftentimes a grayscale screams out, this is all about business. And so that was really good. I appreciate how you did that, Ray. That's amazing. And then created this reflection down at the bottom of this. So we've shown you how to do the reflection piece before. And again, that in order to do the reflection, you're probably going to need to have mastered what tool. What tool will you have to master in order to do the reflections really well? There's actually 3 things that are involved in the reflection. So tell me what those 3 things are that are involved in the reflection. One is to duplicate. Yes, absolutely. You have to master the background removal tool. You have to be able to do that. If you can't do that, and then flip, but I don't really consider flip to be part of the tool, but yes, it's necessary. Opacity, that's the other thing. Those 3 things you have to master: the background removal tool, the ability to be able to duplicate that and make it fit so that it works right, and then to be able to reduce the opacity to create that reflection. That's really a great job. The challenge that you have when you do that is that pool that's reflecting there, and I don't know if you all can see this, it's underneath the word purchase by December, but it's underneath the word purchase there on that line. It's reflecting the image from the top of the building. And so the real challenge is laying that laying the duplicate on top of that and causing that reflection of the top of the building to shine through. That's really challenging. And I understand what Ray's saying. That was part of the challenge that went with this. But remember the moon, not because it was easy, but because it was hard. But this is an example. And Ray, honestly, how long did it take you to do that? It doesn't take very long to do that, but how long did it take you to do that? You spend as much time thinking about how long it takes, about what you're going to do, as you do actually making it happen. There's a lot of, you have to think through the process. What am I going to go through? How am I going to do this? Where am I going to get the images? How am I going to make them work? But what an amazing, I love this. I really do. And so you did a great job, Ray. In about an hour, this is something that the customer is absolutely going to love. Absolutely, Pete. You have to begin with the end in mind. You got to figure out, where do I want to go? And then what process am I going to take to get there? Okay. Yes, absolutely. The spot color is a very nice touch. I appreciate that. Y'all see the spot color? It's in the side mirror, it's in the headlights, and it's in the taillights. It's also in the bow tie on the front. Very good. All right, great job, Ray. Great job. The next thing, and we actually did this in a webinar. We took and played with the snowflakes and some of the imagery. And so Ray took this and added a couple of little things. There was a template that he had, and he added a couple of things to it and spruced that up a little bit. So really, really good job there. The other thing to pay very, very careful attention to when you do this is to make sure that you're paying attention to the shadows. And Ray's done a great job with the shadows here, making the shadows work, because you can see where the shadow of the pickup truck's happening from. We had a whole webinar devoted to shadows one day. And that's the reason why I bring these things up. That's the reason why we spend so much time talking about them, is because they end up making amazing images like this. All right. The next thing that we took from the group was that Jay shared his new logo. We took the Jaybird logo before, and we took that apart. Jay, you're on with us today, so we're going to talk about this for just briefly this morning. Jay had taken that image. We played with that image once in the webinar, in the Friday webinar, and we went through that. Jay has added a couple of things here that I think makes sense. Now, I want to share one thing with you all about the comments on Jay's website. Your branding should always be a reflection of who you are. And some people question the Jaybird, but guess who Jay is? He's Jaybird Lynch, right? And he's always been that. So why would you want to be anything different to try to make that work? Remember, the branding is very, very much intended to be a reflection of who you are. All right? It's very much intended to be a reflection of who you are. And when you, the business owner, sees that, you need to feel inspired by it. And, you know, we have a lot of nonsense, very, very successful businesses like Google. Make sense out of that word, okay? But it reflects who they are, okay? Just keep that in mind as you do that, all right? The next thing from the group is Gemma did this. Gemma created these and then made cards from them. I know what she was trying to do, but I thought that was pretty cool. Again, sharing something about from the print media and the print world that we do in the group. The other thing, Terry did this, and so Terry did a great job of making her first post in the group for a while. Terry always makes really interesting, and I mean really interesting, images, and I like this one a lot. I love the comment. We love it when our treasures become your treasures. What a great statement to make. That's a great branding comment. And so she has this little T's and treasures down in the bottom, and just a really nice looking image. Terry, you did a great job on this. Thank you for sharing that with us in the group. And by the way, I want to remind you all frequently, share your stuff in the group. We talked about this last week. Not nearly, and there's not nearly enough stuff being posted in the group. We should all be sharing frequently, and sharing and commenting and making things very as positive and as encouraging as we possibly can to get people moved forward in their design skills and sharing them. So Terry, thank you for doing that. Yes, I agree. Putting the images on top of a blurred image was really a nice touch to that. So thank you. I think that was really good. I appreciate that. Now, I played a little bit with the image that we had last week that we did in the webinar. And so very good, Terry. I like that idea. My own YOUZIGN playground so I can share more soon. Yeah. Very good, and I'm actually going to talk about something like that in just a moment. So hopefully I'll remember to make that connection because I want to talk about that in just a minute. So I took a minute. Derek, good to have you on today as well. I took just a minute and played with the images that we had from last week on Saturday morning when I had just a little spare time. So I took this little t-shirt design that we had talked about and we played with a little bit, and I dropped it in a couple of mock-ups, and took a look at how did I like those. Now, first of all, I don't like white shirts, so I'm a t-shirt guy. I love t-shirts, but I'm not a big fan of white shirts. I really like this one because it was gray. Gray happens to be one of my favorite colors, but I dropped this in here. I had a lot of fun with this one right here. All right. So I took that little t-shirt design and that theme, and I decided, okay, let's do multiple things with this, because people are always saying, well, I would be able to sell t-shirts if we had more mock-ups in the mock design. Are you kidding me? Is that what's holding you back? I mean, I've literally had people who sent me messages and said, when are they going to put more mock-ups in there so I can sell t-shirts? It's like, that's not where you sell your t-shirts from. It's only to get attention. That's the only reason why you do that. Okay, so let's don't make this more complicated than it has to be. So I took the design and I went to a print company and I dropped that print because this is the reason why I don't like white, because I think it looks different when you put it on the background here. But I want you all to notice one little thing. Do you see the black reflection in here? All right, this is supposed to have been a see-through so that you can see the color from behind. I decided to outline that and make that go away and make them black highlights on that, just FYI. So I took that, dropped it in on a green shirt, and then I played with it and dropped it on a blue color shirt. Didn't really like it on a blue shirt, but these are mock-ups from companies that do t-shirts. All right, this is where I want to put my design so that it makes sense. Okay. Does that make sense to everybody? But play with this, have a little fun with it. I decided to, so I went ahead and I bought several of these shirts. I'm gonna wear them on the holidays, and I'm gonna have fun with it. Okay, that's what this is supposed to be, fun. I was a corporate sales trainer for years. And while I loved the job, I hated the corporate world, okay? And so I enjoy being able to wear my t-shirts now and not have to worry about what anybody thinks. Okay, so problem solving one more week so that the new folks will get a chance to see it. These are the 4 steps that are so important in problem solving. Number 1, love the outcome. Love the outcome. You're looking for the end, not the process. Fall in love with the outcome. And that's, somebody mentioned that a while ago. Begin with the end in mind. What do I want to accomplish? What do I want this image to accomplish? What do I want this mock-up to accomplish? What do I want this social media post to accomplish? Fall in love with the outcomes, and then learn to enjoy the process. I have people tell me all the time, oh man, I just hate it when it does this. Okay, as long as you're hating on it and you're not enjoying the process, then your creativity is going to fly out the window and you're going to sit there and stare at a blank screen. Enjoy the process. Enjoy the process. Use your tools. You might need to put a few ridges in that gold pan instead of smooth sides, and it might catch more gold, right? All right, the next thing is, and this one, I'm not going to go into any length about this, but it's the story, don't be a goose. Don't be a goose. Take the things you learned yesterday and apply them to today. I taught school 25 years ago. I taught school for almost 10 years, 25 years ago. Don't do the math and figure out how old I am, because that will embarrass me. But I had a student send me a note about what I had shared, and he had it 19 years later from when he was in my class. And so I want to share these 4 things with you, because I think these 4 things are important. Beware the perpetuation of the myth. If you believe that this is really, really simple and all you have to do is, I mean, if we were going to the moon today, the way you would garner support for that is you would say the checklist for the 6 simple steps to get to the moon. It's not going to be simple. It's going to be hard. Let's tell people the truth. Don't perpetuate the myth. Let's tell them the truth. Let's talk about what it's going to take in order to do that. Don't perpetuate a myth. Number 2, don't just listen, learn. That's the reason why my hair catches on fire every time somebody talks about a replay, because I tell you what happens. You turn the replay on and you get distracted by something else. And when you do that, you're listening, but you're not learning. Don't just listen, learn. That's why I call this an interactive learning process. I don't want you to just listen. I want you to learn. That's the reason why I ask questions and I want feedback. I'm not doing that for any other reason other than I want to find out if you're learning. It's the reason why I quiz you frequently and say, what went into this? I don't want you to just listen. I want you to learn. The next one, don't just hear the beat, feel it. Don't just hear the beat, feel it. Don't look at Ray's image up there. Don't look at Ray's image and go, man, that's really cool. Get in his space. Get inside of his head. What did he do to do this? Don't just hear the beat, but crawl in there and feel it. Does that make sense to anybody? I hope it does. Wow. Don't just hear the beat, but feel it. And then last of all, and most of all, never let the spoon feed you. I love doing these webinars, but if the only thing you ever learn is what I've learned, it's not going to help you at all. I want you I want you to blow away. I get so excited when I see things that Ray and Gene and Terry and others have produced, because it's like, wow. I want to listen to, I want to feel their beat. All right. I want to feel their beat. A friend of mine posted this today, and it was one of the reasons why I was so distracted trying to get ready. He changed his Facebook profile picture to this. And I loved it. Create every day. Put it on a button. Create every day. Always somebody will say, I'm up against a deadline. I've got to get this done. And I'm thinking, have you practiced at all? Or do you create every day? If you practice, I remember on Friday when somebody said, can we make a silhouette? And I had to say no. Well, guess what? By Saturday evening, we'd figured out how to make a silhouette without a silhouette tool. Figure it out. Create every day. Find a way to make it happen. Okay? Yeah, Terry, I have that problem too. I wake up in the middle of the night and go, it would be so cool to do this. And I pull up my laptop and I do it because it's cool. That's the thing that you want to be able to do. Create every day. I spend a very, very limited amount of time. I watch one football game on Saturday. I watch that football game with my laptop sitting on my lap. I want to create every day. I want to be doing something that's creative every day. Okay? So I want to play with MOCKZIGN just a little bit today. And I have to hurry. I apologize. I'm kind of on a rant this morning. The next thing is we do the mock-ups because it's a battle for attention. I want to remind you of that as we go in today to talk about mock-ups. I made the mistake last week of talking about MOCKZIGN and YOUZIGN, and I had people who thought that those two platforms were inside of each other. They are not. They're two separate platforms or two separate programs. They operate different from each other. And when we talked about integration, I wasn't talking about putting them inside of each other. What I was talking about was doing this very thing right here. I took my little mock-up with the child in it, with my saying on the outside of the shirt. And I found a really cool image where everybody was looking in the same direction. Everybody was looking up in the same direction, and it matched the look of that child, and created that from the mock-up. All right. And this makes the crowd look like they're following the look where that child's looking. Does that make sense to everybody? This is using a mock-up. I took the mock-up that you saw up here earlier. I took this mock-up right here, removed the background, and I dropped it on top of that image. It'll get your attention. What are they looking at, right? But you also get to communicate the message right here. And that's what I was trying to do. In a very simple, very easy process, but you have to have a couple of tools, right? You have to have a couple of tools. One of the tools you have to have is MOCKZIGN. And I made them, but I created the t-shirt design. Then I copy it all you want. That's why we do this, El. Literally copy it all you want. You have to know how to use MOCKZIGN. I created the image in YOUZIGN. I dropped it in MOCKZIGN. And then I brought it back into YOUZIGN, cut the background out of it, and dropped it on top of that image, which I thought was just, how perfect is it, right? The entire time lapse for that, I already had this image right here. The entire time lapse for that was less than 5 minutes. I knew what I wanted to do. Because I knew what my end was. What's my outcome? And then I made it happen because I knew what the outcome was going to be. Does that make sense? So, having said all of that, let's get to the canvas, and we'll play with the canvas for just a little bit. Let me get my screen switched here, so y'all stick with me as I do that. This is kind of a scary process because sometimes I get locked out when that happens. But there we go. All right, give me just a second to make the switch here. And I will be right back. There we go. All right, are y'all seeing my canvas now? All right, good. Thank you for that. I appreciate your feedback. That helps me drastically. Okay, what we're going to do now is I'm going to skip over here to this first design because I want to show you something in the process of this. I really like this moon reflection right here. I clearly remember the day that happened. I was sitting on the hood of a pickup truck as a young boy, looking on July the 20th, looking at the moon, covering it up with my thumb, and seeing it reflecting off the pond that my pickup truck was sitting in front of when we went to the moon. And so this is a very special image to me. There's a problem with this image, though, and I'll show you what it is. When I click on this, do you see the fact that it doesn't go all the way to the edge of the screen? Y'all see that? So guess what I did, because it doesn't go all the way to the edge of the screen? I changed the color of the background to black. How complicated is that? Now it looks like it fills the whole screen up, right? Just make a black background. Very simple stuff. These are, don't be frustrated by what you have. Figure out how to make it work, right? Now, I wouldn't have been able to do that at the bottom, but I can easily do it on the side. Okay? Just wanted to remind you that some of those things you have to figure out, all right? Next thing I want to do. This was that create every day. Where did this button come from? Right here. Let's get the button. Where did the button come from? It's one of our vector images, right? That's a vector image. And I changed the color of that vector image so that it looks like a button that you would push. But create every day. Took these are individual letters, and I shuffled them around. Moved their layout around as I did that. Okay? Very simple stuff. Just kind of fun. Right? Now let's go over here and let's talk about this one, because this one's a little more complex. All right? I woke up this morning with barely a voice, and so I'm having to nurture it just a little bit to get through this morning. Okay? Apologize for the noise in the background. All right, this is my image that I brought in over here. I'll go to the uploads and you can see it. This is what I started with. And I removed the background from this and brought that image in and saved it. Okay, y'all with me? Now, a couple of issues here that are really important. All right. If I leave it like this in this size right here, if I leave it in this size right here, I have a problem with the crowd, right? I have a problem with the crowd. Yeah, that was my intention, was to make it look like a superhero. They're all trying to see whatever that child's seeing, and I wanted him to be way out in front. And but if I have the shoes here, what happens? Looks like he's standing in the air. So what I did instead was I just simply moved that image so that I would cut those feet off, because that's not going to make any sense in my image, right? And got that up so that the proportionality now looks like he's standing on a platform in front of everybody else. Right? By removing the feet, even though they were part of the image, that's where people get in trouble. Take your images and use them so that they work for you. And I took the feet and removed them, okay? I actually added that shadow. I was playing with that shadow when it got time for us to go live. I wanted to make this, wanted to make that image stand out just a little bit. I wasn't real happy with that. I'm glad you caught that. Because when you do this, but when you do that, what happens is this doesn't quite get the same image. So I was playing with the size of this, and I completely ran out of time. And so you can adjust this in this manner and play with the shadow just a little bit so that it adds a little depth. And maybe, I agree, Kim, maybe remove make that a lighter color gray. But I just started on that when I looked down and went, oh, crud, I'm running out of time. And so I had to move on. But you can play with that. But I left that so that y'all could see that. We could play with the shadow on this. It doesn't require a shadow because there's nothing for the shadow to fall on, which is one of the reasons why you want to be very, very careful and very judicious in your use of the shadows, so that you don't end up with a shadow that looks like out of place. It's not proportional. It's disproportionate. Okay? Does that make sense to everybody? But very simple process here of being able to, very simple process of removing the background from this image and then overlaying it on the top of this crowd. And I found that crowd, this is really hard. I found the crowd by going over here and typing in the word crowd, right? Pixabay has an amazing image here. Tammy, I'm not sure I understand your question. Tammy's asking, how do you then save the revised image? When you remove the background, the revised image remains. You save it with the background removed. Hopefully, we've gone into great detail in other webinars about the background removal tool and how you make sure you don't lose that. Let me see if I've got. But you save it that way. Now let's play with this for just a minute, and we'll talk about something that Ray had done. And so let's take this image. We'll make it smaller this time. All right. I'm going to reduce the size of this so it's manageable and easy for me to work with. And I'm going to now. Is it going to be at all possible for us to flip that image? Okay. I might want to flip this image. First of all, I hate to, I'm not a fan of white, just so y'all know. I'm a fan of white space, but I'm not a fan of white. So in order for me to function well, I always have to, I have to do something with that background. And y'all see me do this way too many times, but I have to do something with that background. It's going to drive me nuts, right? So I'm going to take one of these textured images, make that the background. I feel so much better all of a sudden just because I've taken this and made, put it on a different background. Seem a little elementary, doesn't it? Yeah, it does. I know, but necessary for me. All right, let's do this. I'm going to take this image now. And I'm going to copy it, and I'm going to flip it. All right. Now, I have a reversed image of this, which is like what Ray did with the pickup truck, correct? So the first thing I have to be able to do, if I'm going to do what Ray did with the image of the pickup truck inside of that building, is I have to put these two things so that I'm really going to change the size of my canvas here. Forgive me for just a moment. I'm going to do that. It makes me feel a lot better. Let's take that. We'll make that the background. And now we'll put these two images together by making them a group. They're easier to deal with. All right. Are y'all with me? You understand what we're doing? I've taken this, I've flipped this. But here's the problem. The problem is this. That reflection is never going to be 100% of the original, right? Reflection will never be 100% of the original. So I'm going to click on this. I'm going to begin by reducing the opacity of that reflected image. Now it starts to look like a reflection, correct? Now, do you all understand why I don't do that on a white background? Now I have this look more like a reflection, right? Somebody just said stretch it and skew it. Problem is I can't skew using YOUZIGN. So what I'm going to do instead is I'm going to stretch it just a little bit, but not much, just a little bit, just a little bit. Now, depending upon where the sun's coming from, let's take a look at this again because we were playing with the shadow a while ago, right? So if the shadow comes this direction, I'm exaggerating so y'all can see me, all right? Shadow comes from that direction. What do I want to do with this image right here? I'm going to move it just a little bit so that it matches the shadow, right? Does that make sense to everybody? I'm obviously not going to get a shadow to the shadow. Correct? Won't be a shadow to the shadow. There's just one little tiny problem with this. Reflections don't stand out in space. Correct? A reflection never stands out here in space all by itself. I'm gonna give you one little trick that I use frequently to help me figure out what I'm going to do with that shadow, or with what I'm going to do with the reflection. I'm going to go over here and grab just a very simple I'm just going to grab a line. All right, I got to make it big enough I can work with it. I'm going to grab a line right here. And now what I'm going to do, stretch that all the way across. Okay, are you with me? So now I have an orientation for my image. It helps me to properly orientate the directionality if I have something that I know breaks the plane. Now, the struggle that I have is that these two look too much alike. So now I'm going to go back to the background, and I'm going to go to a gradient background instead of this background, okay? And I'm going to now change that background. Remove this image, change it to this. Now it starts to make a little bit more sense, correct? If I change the direction, look what happens. Do you understand why I'm doing this? I want to make sure everybody's following me. Now, this is way too big for the image that I have, obviously. If these were bigger, then it's a little bit easier to do that. All right. In that case, I would do a couple of things with this. I would change the color of that to something more like this. And then I would reduce the opacity of it as well. To where they touch. It takes a little work to do this. It really does, Ray. You're exactly right. And you can play with this all day long. This starts to change drastically when I do that. Now I'm going to take this and I'm going to blur it. All right. And you start to see where those two pieces meet. Now, do you see the difference? I don't know if you can see that or not. It's obvious to me. But this is what you do when you want to create a reflection. Is pretty simple stuff. I say that it's pretty simple stuff, but this is one of those things you've just got to play with a little bit in order to make it make sense. And I highly encourage you, when you've got nothing else to do, find a way to play with this. Create every day. Yes, the blur makes all the difference in the world, Kim. You're exactly right. That's why that's such a cool tool to be able to do that. The other thing that you can do with that blur, now watch what happens if I extend this. How much more of a reflection does that look like now? got awful quiet. Okay, I'm going to ask you this question. How many of you are going to practice this? Just practice this. Practice making a reflection, because you never know when that reflection is going to come incredibly handy. Ray, I know you've mastered this. That's great. But this will become so handy at some point in time, I promise. But don't forget this piece of the puzzle right here. That blur tool with that little bar. And remember, I reduced the opacity of this thing all the way down to 10. But wow, did it make a difference when I did that. Stephen, I knew you'd catch that. Here's the problem with this, doing it this way, is I've got this shadow on here, and it doesn't seem to be working very well for me. Okay. Exactly. I totally agree, Ray. I don't have an easy place to put this right now. I could go over here and find a background. Let me do this. I'll find a background, see if we can drop this on a background. Okay. I've got just enough time to do this. Let's take this. It's still a lake. Reflections on water make a lot of sense. And we can do some interesting things with this. The problem is I can't quite make this water's too wavy to make my reflection work. Come on, Eric, you know better than that. For a point of reference, check this out. Okay? See what's happening there? There is, I want you to see this. See this line going across the middle there with my crosshair? You see the lines going across the middle right there? That's what we did right here with this bar. So we created that line. Okay. Yeah. So if we can find an easy place to do this, and again, this is one of those last minute. I saw Ray's picture and I wanted to talk about reflections, and I didn't have the imagery ready to do that. Let's do this. We can do this. We'll make that the background. We got that picture right. We got that stool is in the way. But if I could take that and put it like that and make it, we'll make it bigger. I would never stretch an image like that. I'm trying to illustrate this for you so that it fits. But you can see how you could do that. Okay. Again, it's another one of those. I have to grab some place for it to reflect. Now, one of the things I'm going to want to play with when I do this is one of the things I want to play with. We've got the background in the way. I'm just going to save these two images together. Again, just save them as a group, and then I can pull them up again. All right. Now let's get rid of all of this. I don't want that background like that. Solid background just like that. Now we're going to bring that image back in. This is why you group your stuff, okay? You group your stuff together so that you can come back and get it. Make this a little bit smaller. Stephen, you give me difficult details to handle with everybody watching and trying to hit this at the right time. But I appreciate what you're saying, and I totally agree with you. Let's take this one right here, and we'll make that the background. Ha! What do you think about that? All right. Now, I've got a pretty decent looking reflection here. If I take that same thing I did before, and I grab this bar right here, instead of a line, and I start it right here. I'm going to leave it that gray color. I'm going to reduce the opacity. How's that look? You see what adding that little bar did? I mean, I just simply added that, reduced the opacity of it. But when I move it out of the way, you can see the difference. There's a difference. I don't know how well you can see it, but I think it makes a big difference when you do that. You can increase the opacity of that a little bit more. Now, one of the things that I would do if I were actually doing this for a client, I would remove the red from this. I would remove the red from this shirt because it's not going to reflect red. It's going to reflect kind of a grayscale of some kind. So I would save that as a grayscale. Well, you can do that. Michelle said, no, it was Melody said, why not reduce the opacity of the shadow figure? You can do that, but what I want to do instead is kind of layer these. Because I know that the further away I get, the fainter that's going to become. And so I'm going to have to blur this so I don't end up with a sharp line there. But you see what I'm talking about? Because I know that reflection is going to fade the closer it gets to me. So I use this. Sometimes you can use, there's other things that you can do as well. I could have made that a circle and done the same thing with it. But again, this is one of those things you can play with drastically. You know, I don't want you to get lost in it, but at the same time, I think that there's ways that you can use this to really enhance your look and not take a lot of time doing it. Ray said he took an hour to create his. We've done this one in about 10 minutes, and we've had some great suggestions. I just can't do them. I can't pull them off in 10 minutes. But this is a great place to learn a skill, and I can change what I'm trying to do with that skill. I love this picture right here. I mean, I think that's pretty cool, right? I mean, I think that's pretty, I think we've taken a very simple gray color background and made a fairly interesting looking, as Joanna said a while ago, looks like the child can do anything, can walk on water. Yep. The whole purpose of this was to make this look special, right? That was the purpose of that. Did it get attention? Which gets more attention, the original or this reflection? Remember, we're in a battle for attention. We want to be able to get people's attention. All right. Anything else? I want you all to play. I want you to make some reflections. Share them in the group. Show us what you've done. Take a look at it. You can learn to do this. All right. We do this not because it's easy, but because it's hard. And hard has a huge payoff. It does. All right. Thank you so much for joining me on this Friday as we roll into the holiday seasons. Please be safe and just take good care of yourself. Take good care of your family. Love on people, and have a great weekend. I look forward to seeing you back here on Friday. Same time, same place.